The restaurant was the kind of place where silence felt expensive. Crystal chandeliers glowed softly above white linen tables, and every movement seemed rehearsed. At the center of it all walked Victoria Hale, billionaire tech founder, poised and untouchable in a tailored black dress. Beside her, holding her hand tightly, was her 8-year-old son, Adrian. It was their monthly tradition, one night away from boardrooms, investors, and headlines. Just mother and son. Adrian loved these dinners, not for the luxury, but because it meant he had her undivided attention. "Mom, can we order dessert first tonight?" he whispered hopefully. Victoria smiled faintly. "We'll see," she replied. As they were led to their table near the window, Victoria's eyes scanned the room instinctively. Years in business had trained her to observe everything. That's when she noticed him, a man sitting alone with a little girl at a corner table that didn't quite match the room's elegance. His suit was clean but clearly old, the cuffs slightly frayed, his shoes polished carefully but worn. Across from him sat a small girl, no older than 6, her hair tied in uneven pigtails. She stared at the menu with wide, nervous eyes. Victoria's gaze lingered longer than she expected. The man leaned closer to his daughter. "You can pick anything," he said gently, though his fingers tightened around the menu. "It's your big day." The girl smiled shyly. "Even the sparkly juice?" she asked. He nodded immediately. "Especially the sparkly juice." Victoria looked away, but something about the exchange unsettled her. Adrian followed her gaze. "Mom, why is that girl wearing sneakers?" he asked quietly. Victoria hesitated. The girl's pink sneakers were noticeably scuffed, out of place against polished marble floors. "Because not everyone dresses the same," Victoria replied carefully. At the other table, the waiter returned with visible hesitation. "Sir," he said quietly, "there is a minimum charge this evening." The man blinked, clearly embarrassed. "I understand," he replied softly. "We'll manage." Victoria watched the way his daughter's smile faltered for a split second, as if she sensed something wasn't right. The man straightened in his chair, pretending confidence he didn't feel. "It's okay," he assured the waiter. "It's her birthday." The words hung in the air. "Ah!" Adrian heard them too. "Mom," he whispered, "it's her birthday." Victoria's chest tightened unexpectedly. She had closed billion-dollar deals without blinking. But something about the way the father sat there, trying so hard not to show strain, felt heavier than any negotiation. The waiter walked away, clearly uncomfortable. Victoria tried to refocus on Adrian, but her mind kept drifting back. The father was studying the menu with the intensity of someone calculating more than flavors. She recognized that look. She had seen it before in her own childhood. Before the companies, before the wealth. When her own father had once saved for months just to take her somewhere special, Adrian tugged at her sleeve. "Can we send her cake?" he asked innocently. Victoria inhaled slowly. Across the room, the father reached into his wallet discreetly, counting bills under the table. Not many. He swallowed hard, unaware that someone was watching, not with judgment, but with recognition. Victoria placed her napkin down carefully. "Adrian," she said quietly, "finish your water." Her son blinked. "Why?" "Because," she replied softly, standing from her chair, "we're about to do something unforgettable." Across the room, the single father had no idea that this birthday dinner was about to change in a way he could never have imagined. Victoria did not walk toward the man immediately. Instead, she spoke quietly to the restaurant manager, who approached her table with visible respect. Within seconds, his posture changed from formal professionalism to confused hesitation as she gave a calm but firm instruction. Adrian watched closely, sensing something important was happening. At the corner table, Daniel Carter was still pretending everything was fine. His daughter Lily swung her feet nervously under the table, clutching the edge of her menu. "Daddy, this place smells fancy," she whispered. Daniel smiled gently. "That's because it is," he replied, though his eyes briefly flicked toward the exit as if calculating escape. The manager approached Daniel's table cautiously. "Sir," he began, "there seems to have been a small misunderstanding. Tonight, there will be no minimum charge for you." Daniel frowned in confusion. "I'm sorry." The manager cleared his throat. "Everything you and your daughter order this evening will be covered." Daniel's expression hardened immediately. "I don't need charity," he said quietly but firmly. His daughter looked between them, sensing tension. The manager glanced toward Victoria's table before responding. "It's not charity, sir. It's a celebration." Daniel followed the manager's subtle glance and saw Victoria standing a few steps away. Their eyes met for the first time. There was no pity in hers, only something calm and steady. She approached slowly, Adrian beside her. "Good evening," Victoria said politely. "My son heard it was your daughter's birthday." Lily nodded shyly. "I'm 6, she said proudly. Adrian smiled. "I'm 8, he replied. "That's almost grown up." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, I appreciate the gesture, but I can handle my daughter's dinner." Victoria studied him carefully. "I believe you can," she answered. "But tonight isn't about what you can afford. It's about what she deserves." The words landed quietly between them. Lily's eyes sparkled as a server suddenly arrived with sparkling juice and a small cake decorated with bright candles. The entire restaurant staff gathered, singing softly. Lily gasped, hands covering her mouth in disbelief. Daniel sat frozen, overwhelmed. He hadn't expected humiliation. Instead, he was witnessing joy on his daughter's face, unlike anything he had seen in months. Victoria crouched slightly to Lily's level. "Make a wish," she said gently. Lily closed her eyes tightly. As applause filled the room, Daniel looked at Victoria again. "Why?" he asked quietly, genuine confusion in his voice.
Hi.
Victoria hesitated for just a moment. "Because someone once did this for me," she replied simply, "and I never forgot it." Adrian leaned toward Lily. "You should wish for something big," he whispered. Lily giggled and blew out the candles. The room brightened with smiles instead of whispers. Daniel swallowed the lump in his throat. "Thank you," he said finally, the words heavy but sincere. Victoria nodded once. "Enjoy the evening," she replied, stepping back toward her own table. But as she sat down, she did not look away this time. Something about the quiet strength in Daniel's refusal of pity lingered in her thoughts. And she had a feeling this dinner was not the end of the story. The restaurant slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but something had shifted in the air. Daniel sat back in his chair, watching Lily laugh as she carefully saved half her cake for later. He wasn't used to strangers stepping into his life like that, especially not people dressed in quiet wealth and confidence. Yet Victoria's gesture hadn't felt like pity, it had felt intentional. Across the room, Adrian kept glancing at Lily with curiosity. "She looks really happy," he told his mother. Victoria nodded. "Happiness doesn't cost much," she replied softly, though she knew the truth was more complicated than that. Sometimes it costs pride, sometimes it costs swallowing embarrassment. Daniel finally stood and walked toward Victoria's table, Lily holding his hand tightly. He stopped at a respectful distance. "Ma'am," he began calmly, "I meant what I said earlier. I can provide for my daughter." His tone wasn't defensive, it was steady. Victoria met his eyes without flinching. "I never doubted that," she answered. "But providing isn't only about money. Sometimes it's about letting someone else stand beside you for a moment." Daniel considered her words carefully, unsure how to respond. Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, can I say thank you?" she whispered. Daniel nodded. Lily stepped forward. "Thank you for my best birthday ever," she said proudly. Adrian grinned. "You're welcome, Mama. But my mom did the big part," he admitted. Victoria smiled faintly. "Actually," she corrected gently, "your father did the biggest part. He brought you here." Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. No one had framed it that way before. He had only seen the financial strain, not the effort behind it. As they spoke, the waiter discreetly handed Daniel a folded card. Confused, he opened it slowly. Inside was a simple message written in elegant handwriting. "If you ever need opportunity instead of charity, call this number." Beneath it was Victoria Hale's direct contact. Daniel looked up sharply. "I don't need favors," he said quietly. Victoria's expression remained calm. "It's not a favor, it's a conversation," she replied. "You strike me as someone who values dignity." "So do I." The simplicity of her tone unsettled him more than pressure would have. He slipped the card into his jacket pocket without committing either way. "Thank you for tonight," he said again, this time without resistance. Victoria inclined her head slightly. After Daniel and Lily returned to their table, Adrian looked at his mother thoughtfully. "Are we going to help them more?" he asked. Victoria watched the single father carefully cut Lily's steak into small pieces, making sure she didn't struggle. "That depends," she answered quietly, "on whether he lets us." Dinner ended, and Daniel paid for what he had originally ordered despite the manager's insistence otherwise. Pride wasn't loud with him. It was quiet and persistent. As he and Lily prepared to leave, Victoria caught his eye once more. There was no dramatic exchange, no promise. It's just mutual recognition. But as Daniel stepped out into the cool night air with his daughter's small hand in his, he felt the card pressing against his chest, like something heavier than paper. And for the first time in months, he allowed himself to wonder whether accepting help might not mean weakness after all. Across the street, Victoria watched from the window, thoughtful and unusually quiet. And she knew she wasn't finished. 3 days passed before Daniel finally took the card out of his jacket pocket again. He'd carried it with him everywhere, as if afraid that leaving it behind would close a door he wasn't ready to shut. Lily had talked about her birthday nonstop, telling anyone who would listen about the sparkling juice and the giant cake. But Daniel kept thinking about Victoria's words. On the 4th morning, after dropping Lily at school, he sat in his car for 10 full minutes staring at the number on the card. Pride wrestled with practicality. His construction contract had just been reduced to part-time hours, and rent was due in 2 weeks. Finally, he inhaled deeply and made the call. Victoria answered herself. "Daniel Carter," she said calmly, as if she had expected him. "I was wondering when you'd call." Daniel stiffened slightly. "This isn't about charity," he said immediately. "I'm not asking for money." Victoria's voice remained steady. "Good. I don't offer money. I offer opportunity." They agreed to meet at her corporate office later that afternoon. When Daniel walked into Hale Industries headquarters, the building felt intimidating, but not unwelcoming. Employees moved with purpose. Screens displayed projects, designs, and community initiatives. This wasn't just a corporation, it was a machine built on ambition. Victoria met him in a private conference room, dressed in the same quiet confidence she had worn at dinner. "Tell me what you do," she said without ceremony. Daniel explained his experience in structural maintenance, safety compliance, and small project management. He spoke carefully, not exaggerating, not underselling. Victoria listened intently, and he finished. She nodded once. "We're expanding our community development division," she said. "Affordable housing projects, renovations in underfunded neighborhoods." Daniel's eyes flickered with interest despite himself. "You'd trust me with something like that?" he asked cautiously. "I trust character," Victoria replied, "and I saw yours clearly." She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a proposal: site operations lead, competitive salary, full benefits, flexible scheduling. Daniel stared at the page, almost disbelieving. It wasn't a handout, it was responsibility. "You'd start with a 3-month evaluation," she continued. "No special treatment. You earn it like everyone else." Daniel nodded slowly. "And if I fail?" he asked honestly. Victoria's expression softened slightly. "Then you'll fail trying, not surviving." Daniel thought of Lily, of the way she had closed her eyes to make her birthday wish, of how he had almost let embarrassment steal that moment from her. He extended his hand across the table. "I won't disappoint you," he said firmly. Victoria shook his hand once. "Don't worry about me," she replied. "Sure you don't disappoint her?" The reminder landed with quiet weight. 6 months later, Lily walked through the nearly completed housing complex her father now supervised. She held a small hard hat that matched his. "You built this?" she asked in awe. Daniel smiled. "With a team," he corrected gently. Across town, Victoria and Adrian attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony. As Daniel gave a short speech thanking the company for believing in skilled workers who only needed a chance, Victoria felt something rare in her world of profit margins and quarterly growth pride that had nothing to do with numbers. After the ceremony, Lily ran toward Adrian. "Guess what?" she announced proudly. "My daddy didn't need charity. He just needed a chance." Adrian grinned. "That's what my mom said too." Victoria watched Daniel laugh with his daughter, standing taller than the man she had first seen counting bills under a restaurant table. She hadn't saved him. She had simply opened a door. And sometimes, that is the most unbelievable thing a billionaire can do.